All right, everybody, welcome back to an episode of the Millennial Sales Podcast. This is your host, Tom Alemo, Tommy Tahoe in the house. November 30th, last day of the second to last month of the year. You're probably hearing this on December 1st. To kick off December, the last month of what a freaking crazy year this has been. Excited for this podcast for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, coming off of a big time 5-day Thanksgiving rest, relaxation, vacation, so to speak, of really not doing a hell of a lot. I've been spending time with family and eating and drinking and sleeping, little exercise, learned how to play chess, and not very good at it, but it was all good. So, and I got engaged, a couple weeks ago, but have gone, kind of public with it as of this weekend with my now fiance. So life is coming at you fast. No matter what happened in 2020, there's still a lot of good that can come out of it, and a lot of good has come out of it for me. So I'm just very grateful and very thankful that you're joining in, you're listening in for all the good that's happening in the world, and in my world, hopefully in your world, and hopefully we can all see the beauty around us in life. For today's episode, though, man, it's a good one. I got the king of SaaS, John Barrows, and there's a lot of bad things that can happen in sales. Deals can go haywire at the last second. People can hang up on you. Negotiations can get brutal. You could lose a major renewal if you're in that business. And the cure to everything, though? I can't really find anything that this is not a cure for, is a big, fat pipeline. And that's what my guest, John Barrows, has to say. And I agree wholeheartedly that, negotiation for a contract becomes a lot easier when you have a big pipeline. Prospecting becomes a lot easier when you have a fat pipeline. One-on-ones with your boss become a lot easier when you have a fat pipeline, when you got a lot of deals in the pipe that are legit, that are real, that you're working. It just lets you be more creative. It lets you flow more freely. It makes you more confident. And, the only way to make that happen is to prospect and to treat your territory like you're the CEO of that business. And that's what John comes here to talk about. You could check out my first episode. So I had an episode with John, about 2 years ago, and it was really good. You could check it out. I think it's episode 111 or 112, and we talk about his origin story. We talked about, he was in sales. He was at Staples. He went over to Basho to do some sort of training there and sell training, and really talking about, his 12 guiding principles. If you want to know John as a person, as a man, as a leader, as a salesperson, as a father, you can listen to that episode. He really gives his origin story, and I think that is a great place to maybe set some context if you're not familiar with John, or if you want to learn more about him. In this episode, I want to bring him back to get more tactical, to get more into, what he's teaching on a day-to-day basis. If you do not know John, if you are in SaaS sales, software sales, technology sales, and you do not know John Barrows, I'll tell you right now, you are behind the curve. You do not know this guy. You are behind the curve. He works with, I've labeled him the king of SaaS. I hope I get credit for that, but he's working with Salesforce, Tableau, Slack, Box, DocuSign, pretty much all of the big companies, successful sales companies in SaaS. A lot of them he works with. He came at my former employer, Tech Target, and helped us out a year or two ago as well. So, and I'm a fanatic reader of his content, what he writes. His Make It Happen podcast is great. So, first of all, you got to check him out. But we talk in this episode specifically about, a lot about prospecting. What's so interesting about John is that not only is he a CEO, not only does he run his own training company, but he's also a salesperson. He prospects every day. He not only teaches his clients to build pipeline, but he makes sure he has his own pipeline. And he does that through LinkedIn. He makes calls. He asks for referrals. He sends cold emails and personalizes them. On top of running 6 to 10 training sessions every week, right? So for his clients. So the guy's an animal. We're going to talk about how and when to send personalized emails, he's gonna walk through how he goes about his monthly prospecting, which I think is really cool. Um, he answers a few questions from the audience, including one about video, not only how to use it, but how, if you're a leader of a team, to get your team to adopt video in their sales process. Um, what else do we talk about? We talk about why he wears a "Make It Happen" shirt pretty much every single workday. You're not going to see him on video probably without that shirt. And if you're watching on YouTube, he does wear that shirt during this interview as well. And he shares also about some of his time management. Friday My Day is something that he created to give him and his employees a little bit of space, a little bit of breathing room for creativity and mental health on Fridays this year, given everything happening in 2020. So a few things you can do if you like what we have to say here in this episode. Number one, first and foremost, go check out John. Go follow his blog, jbarrows.com. Go follow him on LinkedIn. He's got 350,000 followers on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. He's all there. Instagram is pretty funny. He's got some funny stories that he does, and he gives you a more behind the scene version of who he is as a person, which I think is cool. Go to his online training portal. It's like the Netflix for sales. I've actually bought it. This is not an ad, but I've actually personally invested in it for a year subscription and used it to get myself ramped up in my new role at SkillJar. So as an AE, I'm using it to learn how to prospect better, how to set my goals better, things like that, negotiate. It's great. It's got content with Morgan Ingram, Richard Harris, a few other people. So it's great content there. So first thing, go show him some love. Second, show me some love. So you can, first of all, subscribe wherever you're listening, on Apple or Spotify. The number one thing you can do to help me out, I do all this content. I've been doing it for 3.5 years. I don't make a penny off this podcast. This is episode 185. And the reason I don't have ads is because I want it to show value. So the way you can help me out is leave a review on Apple, subscribe on Apple, on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube. You could check me out, see what I look like, check out John and his Make It Happen shirt. That's really the best way to connect with me. If you want to chat with me, I respond to every message on LinkedIn, Tom Alemo, Twitter and Instagram, Tommy Tahoe. I'll give you a little bit more behind the scenes of what I'm all about. But really, the number one thing you can do is leave a review for the podcast and share it out with someone. Share it out with someone that you think could really use some help in sales, because John drops some great content. And really, the most important thing you can do is use the info. Use what John says. Take notes today. Take 1 to 2 things that you can put into your daily sales practice for your prospecting or otherwise, and use it. That's what he wants you to do. That's what I want you to do. The whole purpose of the show is so that you can sell better, you can live better, you can have a better career. And the only way to do that, it's great to soak in information. I love doing that, but you got to actually use it. So without further ado, you've heard enough of me. Hopefully you subscribe to the podcast. Hopefully you leave a review. It takes a minute to do. But without further ado, let's bring you into my conversation with my good friend, John Barrows. Let's go. John Barrows, good morning, man. Welcome to Millennial Sales. Let's make it happen.
Hey, what's going on, Tom? I appreciate you having me on here, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got to ask, just to kick it off, you got the Make It Happen shirt on. Every video podcast that I see, you've got it on. Do you wear one? Do you have 5, one for every day of the week, or how's that set up?
I got about 50 of them, man. Yeah. So I wear one every day of the week. It actually stemmed from when I was doing sales kickoffs. Actually last year when I do sales kickoff month, this one's going to be weird because it's all going to be virtual, but usually sales kickoffs are, my busiest time of year. So January, February. And what was happening was I would, 5 days a week, I'm going from San Francisco to Vegas to to wherever. And it's like 1 day, 1 out, 5 days a week. And for me, I could get, before I was dressing in a collared shirt, jeans, and my shell toes, right? With that, I could get 3 days in a backpack. So 3 collared shirts, 3 pairs of underwear, 3 t-shirts, whatever. The jeans will last 3 days, whatever. But 4th day, I had to bring a carry-on. And carry-ons are a pain in the ass when you're going from place to place to place to place to place, right? So I was like, how can I get 5 days in a backpack? And I was like, well, shit, I like my tagline here, make it happen. Like that makes it easy. So with a blazer on, I could get 5 t-shirts, 5 pair of underwear, 5 pair of socks with a blazer and jeans. And that's 5 days in a backpack. And so it got me there. And I didn't do it because, you know, you hear Zuckerberg and, you know, a lot of the executives, they talk about how they wear the same thing, right? Zuck wears the same exact thing. What's his name? Apple, you know, he always used to wear the same stuff. And it was because they wanted to reduce, they call it decision fatigue, right? Where they make so many decisions in a day that they wanted to remove as many of those basic small decisions because those pile up. And as much as I thought that was kind of a joke, now that I'm in that zone, it's absolutely true. I wake up in the morning, I grab my Make It Happen shirt, my jeans, and I'm done. I don't even think about what I'm wearing, and it's awesome. So yes, I wear one every day.
I was curious if it was purely branding or if it was like a decision fatigue, like Steve Jobs type of vibe that you had going on.
It was a little bit of everything. It was actually for me to get on an airplane, you know what I mean? Like, so I didn't have to do a carry on, but it led to a decision fatigue and also the branding part of it, because it's also a mentality. Like, my mentality is make it happen. So it's almost like every morning when I put the shirt on, I have that mentality and I'm ready to go.
I love it. I love it. So it looks like from following you around on Instagram that you've been traveling a ton in the last few months too. Did you buy an RV or did you rent one, or what's going on with that?
That's a whole nother story, man. I never thought of myself as an RV guy in any way, shape, or form. I mean, my wife and I had some bucket list trips this year, right? We were going to go to the Galapagos, like the Caribbean, and a bunch of other places, and obviously that all got canceled. So I'm like, all right, well, fuck, you know, screw it. Let's go. Let's like kind of take our vacationing into our own hands. And kind of like COVID wise, we felt like an RV was, my daughter's 9 too. So I thought it'd be a cool time to take a trip across the country. But when we looking into them, they were super popular. So renting one was kind of a pain in the ass for the time slots that we wanted. We ended up going to the dealer to check it out just to see if we could sit in one for hours. Right. And we ended up doing the math and realizing that like it costs $250 a month to, $250 a night to rent one of these things, like a decent one. And it's an $85,000 thing that we get, like a, 30 foot, whatever, sleep 7. And if you put 20 grand down, the payments are $450 a month. So I did the math, I'm like, wait a minute, one night is $250, a week is $1,500, give or take. So if I rent this thing out for a week, it pays for 3 months of the mortgage. All I have to do is rent this thing out 5 times a year and it pretty much pays for itself. I'm like, screw it, let's buy it. So we ended up buying it. We drove cross country. We drove to Yellowstone, which was super fun. And then just this weekend we went up, now we're doing like kind of little weekend trips and just trying to get away and just, if nothing else, to get away from the insanity. It's been a really good kind of mental clarity thing that me and my wife and daughter are kind of take advantage of as much as we can these days, but still blows my mind that I'm now an RV owner, because that's about the last thing if you had asked me last year, John, do you ever see yourself owning an RV? I'd be like, dude, that's the last thing I could see myself owning. But we are where we are and you got to adapt.
It's crazy. And I've seen that like all over from other people, random people on social media, that they bought or rented RVs. It's like, man, it's not a great time to be a salesperson of some things, but like RV and Zoom is like, if you're a salesperson of either of those two things, you're doing pretty well this year.
You're doing all right. There's certain things that absolutely popped when COVID hit, right? And certain things obviously got destroyed, but man, if you were in certain industries that were kind of, oh yeah, like to haves, now all of a sudden must haves, yeah, you're making it rain right now.
For sure. So that leads me to, you had a great post that you've talked about. I think it got a lot of traction when you came back from that 2-week trip and you had, 2,000 or so emails and you were combing through them and you kind of sorted them out into, marketing spam versus, sales rep emails versus, thank you emails and so on and so forth, customer service. And there was such a lack of personalization, right? I don't have the stats in front of me, but the main takeaway was like, sales reps aren't, they didn't personalize anything to you. So I want to dive in on that. Like, that seems so hard to believe because you put so much content out that's, main part of your job. So when you say that it's not personalized, do you mean they're not referencing anything of the content that you had? They're not referencing anything about JB sales. It's just like, hey, John, here's how we can help you do X, Y, Z. Like, is it really that vanilla?
So it shocked me, man. Cause I've been training now for whatever, 12 years or something like that. And, and especially early on, it was all about personalization. Right now I've kind of shifted to personalization and relevance and whatever, but I've been preaching about, and look, I'm not that important, right? But, I run my own little 7-person company here. I'm also, to your point, I'm also not shy about what I invest in. I mean, all you got to do is listen to 1 or 2 podcasts and you'll hear me drop some sort of technology that I'm using or what I'm looking for or whatever it is. And when I came back, there was 2,040 emails in my inbox, and I segmented them out to list service and all that other stuff. And there were 78, what I would consider 78 sales emails, right? Which were somebody trying to get a meeting with me to sell me something. Okay, cool. 0 of them were personalized. 0. And I mean personalized, anything along the lines of, hey, John, I read your blog. Hey, John, I was on your LinkedIn profile. Like, even the basics of personalization weren't there. And I couldn't, like, to me, I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, again, I feel like I'm beating the same drum over and over, and people are like, oh yeah, whatever. Okay, personalization, we get it. Yeah, we all personalize, but nobody is. And to me, I think a lot of people talk a good game about personalization, but we're still in a world where numbers matter. And I also think that we're in this transition phase right now where people understand that quality is the way to go, right? Account-based marketing and all these different things, right? Personalization at scale, blah, blah, blah. I think people understand that's the way to go, but we're still being held to 50 dials a day, 100 activities, whatever that number is, right? So it's really hard to manage towards quality. What's easy to manage towards is, Tom, did you send your 50 emails out today? Did you make your 50 dials today? And if you didn't, I'm going to whap you over the head for it, right? So I think as much as people understand it, they still in practice aren't doing it because it does take time. It does, take some effort to go on somebody's LinkedIn profile, look at their activities, go on their website, look at some news and events, and come up with something that's good enough to make connection to make relevant, right? But I'm telling you right now, out of the 2,040 emails that I got, 356 of them were LinkedIn messages. Of the 356 LinkedIn messages, I think there was about 9 of them were personalized, and 1 of them did video. And again, same thing. I've been preaching video. Morgan and I have been preaching video, LinkedIn video emails now for about 1.5 years now. And we've been talking about how incredible it is and like how 50% of our pipeline is generated that way. And I only got 1. And guess what was the one I responded to? It was the personalized LinkedIn video. It was the only one out of all those emails that I got that I actually responded to. So it's there in theory. It's not there in practice still.
So I want to dive in a little. It's crazy to me. So I want to get a little bit further into this. So I'm taking, I'll do a shameless plug. I'm taking the JB online sales training portal. That was something that, when I got a new gig about a month ago, was something that I wanted to invest in because I was going from managing a team, being a player coach, to just an AE carrying a bag. And I wanted to really kind of invest back in like, all right, what are the tactics people are using? How can I up my game? And I love the portal. And you talk about, how to personalize, like tailored versus targeted messaging. Mm-hmm. So, in that, maybe I'm misquoting you, but it's something to the extent of like, the top tier accounts that you want to go after, they're going to be very targeted. They're going to be very tailored specific to the person. Whereas, the B accounts, the tier 2s are going to be more targeted. They're going to be maybe like persona based or industry based types of targeting, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So do you think that maybe everyone just had you in that second bucket and they were trying to target you based on your industry, or is that part of the game? Do you think that people are just trying to get like a mass quantity out there?
100%. I think there's this immediate satisfaction, right? Where somebody would rather, because look, doing personalization, because there's the top of the people talk about personalization, and personalization is great, but without relevance, it's meaningless. It's actually, I think it's even worse, right? Because that's why I'm not as freaking out as much about AI as I used to before. Because artificial intelligence, and I've sent this email out a bunch of times, or I've seen this, I've used this in my presentations, where there was this AI bot back in 2017 that somebody split from Salesforce and created this artificial intelligence bot based on my email structure, like the YUI, email structure. And I was like, what? And they were like, oh, John, we want to show it to you. Right. And they sent it to me, and I was like, holy shit. Cause it was so good. Like it was personalized. It was relevant, the whole thing. So at first I was like, oh my God, if AI can do this, we are in deep trouble as sales professionals. But then what happened was I started seeing AI. What AI can do is it can highlight, it can find something personal, but it can't yet make it relevant based on whatever your solution is, right? So I don't know about you, but I'm getting a ton of emails from that say, hey, John, I see you went to University of Maryland, go Terps. And then it just hard cuts to some, and the reason I'm reaching out is because we got this really great software development platform. So there's no relevance at all, right? So to me, if you would have asked, John, if you could choose personalization or relevance, which one would you choose? I would choose relevance all day long. Because if you know me as a VP or a CEO of a small business training company, and you can ask very pointed questions that you could ask any CEO of training companies in the SMB space, you could send that out to 50 people, and I'll still respond to that more than, hey, John, I see you went to the University of Maryland, boom, right? So I think there's this connection that we have to make, but it takes time to do that personalization. And so people are I just fundamentally believe that most people, I know that most people are lazy. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I personally believe that 80% of this world are fucking sheep, and they want to be told what to do, and they want a button, because I get daily questions. Hey, John, do you got a template email that I could send to, my financial services clients that gets you a really good response? Like I got a text message the other day from a buddy of mine saying, hey, I'm taking over a territory for somebody who just got fired. What's a great email that I could send to all his customers to get some meetings out of them? I'm like, dipshit, there isn't. There isn't one email. If there was, none of us would have jobs. You know what I mean? If there was the silver bullet, if it was easy, everybody would do it scenario thing. And I think everybody's always looking for that easy way out to get that, quick response, that endorphin rush that somebody got a response and whatever it is, because it's easier to send out 500 emails at a time and get 5 or 6 responses than it is to spend 10, 15 minutes writing, researching. Because when you do that, when you do the research and you put that much effort into one email and you don't get a response, it is demoralizing. It is defeating, right? Because you're like, wait a minute, I spent all that time doing research and I didn't get a response here. So what the, fuck it. I'll just send out 500 emails, see what I get a response, right? And so people defer to that, even though that this is the long game here.
So how do you, in that example, right, where someone says, go Terps or whatever, and then they talk about their product, how do you link those two? Because I've seen people talk about trying to get that, how do you so then what, so you wouldn't leverage something like University of Maryland. You would maybe use something like a blog post that you wrote that somehow relates to what we do. If it's not relevant to them, that's not worth showing that you did your research.
Let it put it this way, put it in the PS. Don't lead with it. You know what I mean? So, hey, Tom, I've been keeping myself updated on you guys, and I noticed you guys are doing some cool stuff. I want to talk to you. PS, go Terps. It's something like that. That's where you use it. But don't try to stretch. I mean, unless you sell something about, university, unless you sell something that's relevant to the University of Maryland, or something about how I could reconnect with my alumni from University of Maryland, then okay, do it. But don't lead with that shit, because it shows a lack of, and especially if you're reaching out to somewhat sophisticated buyers who've been in the market for a little while. If I get, you immediately lose credibility to me on fake. It's like fake personalization and fake empathy are worse than no empathy or no personalization. Example, when COVID hit, right? March, you heard, lead with empathy, right? So every single stupid email that hit my inbox within a couple of days started with, hey, John, I hope you and your family are doing well. And then cut to some piece of shit value proposition that had nothing to do with me. Like that, you get less credit if you do that than if you just said, hey, John, I got this great software development thing. Because the fake empathy right now you're kind of patronizing me in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't know me. You don't give a shit about me. You know, you just want to sell that thing. So just sell that thing. Don't pretend like you're cool and try to sell that thing. Just sell the thing. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing with, hey, John went to University of Maryland. Like, roll my eyes. That was, sales circa 2002, back in when LinkedIn was first. I mean, look, when LinkedIn first started going out, that, you know what I mean, was really starting to become popular in the early 2000s. That did work because it did show that you took that extra layer of effort to go and look at me. Now it's like, dude, shut up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a 44-year-old man. If you reference something I did in college, like, shut up. So you really like take that time so that either the relevance factor and say, hey, John, you're a CEO in the, in the training industry of an SMB team. So what could people like that be dealing with right now? Ask me some questions, send me some content that's relevant to those type of things. You don't have to personalize that at all. As long as it's relevant to me and it gets me to think a little bit, I'll pay attention to that far more than I would pay attention to somebody who's pretending like they care.
And do you adjust that at all, depending, whether it's a C-suite person versus a VP versus a director? Like, in my opinion, I find that, or what I've always thought is that the more important they are, the less they want to read. So, a CEO, you might give them a 3-sentence email versus a director. Maybe it's going to be a little bit longer, or you include some more info or something like that. But is that how you generally go about it, or?
Yeah, I mean, the higher I go, the more personalized I tend to get, right? But also the tighter I have to be with my messaging, right? Because again, the higher you go, the more emails you get in your inbox and the less likely you are to respond, but the more personalized I get as well. So, I mix it up. Look, the challenge with personalization too is that usually if I were to sit down, let's take the numbers of cadences, right? And say, okay, you need, I don't know, whatever the number is these days, between 9 and 15 touches to get a response, right? Whatever that is. Well, the personalization part of that, I mean, 9 personalized emails, that's pretty damn hard to come by. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I'm going to send you an email, like, after like if I do research on you, Tom, like I'm probably, you and your company, between you and your business, I could probably find 2 to 3 legit things to make connections to, right? Something based on your history or your previous job and maybe what your current company is doing, maybe a press release or something like that. But after like the third one, it starts to get a little weak as far as like me stretching to make a connection here, right? So that's why I round it out with personalization and relevance. So for instance, my first email to you is going to be about something around, hey, I was on your website and I noticed this thing happened. I'd like to have a conversation. Second one might be sharing a piece of content that's relevant to what I just said there. Third one might be a call based on a persona. Hey, Tom, we're showing other VPs of sales in your industry how to drive these type of results based on their challenges. Would like to have a conversation with you about it. Like the fourth one might be more personalized. Hey, I was on your LinkedIn profile, maybe do a little LinkedIn video. Fifth one's another persona driven one, asking you a question. Hey, Tom, how are you keeping your reps motivated and engaged now that now that they're all working from home? The reason I ask is because VPs of sales whose main priority is keeping their reps motivated and engaged are leveraging our training to do this, right? And I can send that out to 50 other people. So it's kind of a mix and match thing. The key is telling the story. The key is having the messaging around triggers and the messaging and the understanding of personas. So when I sit down and go after you, I can find out however many triggers I can find, right? Open up a new office, whatever it is. And then I can say, all right, where's my trigger messaging? Cool. What persona am I going after? Where's my persona messaging? What content is now relevant to that person? And now with all those assets, now let me take a step back and figure out how to tell this story. What's my first touch, second touch, third touch, fourth touch? Which ones are going to be calls? Which ones are going to be emails? Where am I going to layer social on top of this? Right. So that's the key there, is that we need to be kind of preceding a lot of this messaging based on triggers and personas, so that when we're executing, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're actually finding that messaging and we're using it to tell our story.
I love that. And I want to pivot you to time management, because we were talking about this before the show for a little bit, and you're talking about how you run your schedule a little bit through the week and what you do on Fridays. So could you speak to, first, can you speak to, Friday is my day and how you kind of came up with that? And then I'd love to just hear from you as well on how you run the other 4 days of the week, because I see sometimes you post on, Instagram or something like that, like, hey, look, I've got 5 hours of straight training, and you're grinding, and I know you're grinding. And I know that's one of your key philosophies is, work hard and smart. And so I know you work your ass off. So I'm curious how you set up trying to get all your content out versus you prospect versus your trainings, customer success, service stuff that you have to do, all of that.
Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, and for context for people listening, I'm a CEO of my own little company here, 7 people, but I still prospect into 25 tier 1 accounts on a quarterly basis. I currently manage, 10 to 20 deals in my pipeline at any given point in time. And I'm cross-selling, upselling to existing accounts while doing probably 10 trainings a week, plus the meetings, plus the management, plus all that stuff. So without structure, I tend to fall apart. Right. So I have to do certain things that are baked in, that are almost like a routine factor to me. Right. Because I found that if I have a routine doing something, it tends to happen. If I don't have a routine and treat it as kind of like an event, I usually can run over that event anytime. So like, a lot of people, especially AEs, they might schedule 2 hours on Tuesday afternoon from 2 to 4 to do prospecting. Right. By the time that day comes and that hour comes, I could probably come up with 8 million other things to do that I think are more important than prospecting. So that's why it always gets pushed to the bottom of the list, right? But if I have a routine doing it where every day I'm doing a little bit of, a few things, or every month I'm doing a few things, then I kind of get into that mode. So I'll walk you through, like I'll finish with the Friday stuff, but I'll walk you through my routine. I tier out my accounts. I got my top 25 tier 1 accounts, and I do that on a quarterly basis, right? So once a quarter, I go in and I kind of reset on who my new top 25 tier 1 accounts are. In those top 25, I have 3 personas that I go after: VPs of sales, CROs, and VPs of enablement, right? So that's 75 people. So what I do is at the first business day of every quarter and every month is blocked off 100%. So the first Monday of every quarter and every month is blocked off 100% to do prospecting, set the stage for, so that the rest of my month and the rest of my quarter is all about execution. And during that day on Mondays, I got my team meetings in the morning, but then for 2 hours, I pick 5 accounts that are tier 1 and I go deep on them. I do all my research at the same time, right? So I look on their websites, I look at their LinkedIn profiles, and I come up with my 6 to 10 touch cadence for each one of those 5 accounts, right? It's very tailored. It's very thoughtful. And then I send out that first email and I schedule touch 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 throughout the rest of the month so that the content is already in those activities. So I already know what I'm going to say when they happen. Then for another 2 hours, we pick a persona-driven cadence. So VPs of sales in the SaaS industry, something like that. And I come up with 6 or 7 messages that speak to VPs of sales in the SaaS industry, right? That are targeted, but not tailored. So, right. And I come up with, usually they're emails in my case, because I don't have a lot of time to do call blitzes these days. So I come up with 6 or 7 emails that speak to that persona and figure out where I'm going to share content. And I run 50 to 100 people through that. So during those 2 hours on that Monday, I come up with 6 or 7 messages and I send my first one out to 50, and then I schedule touch 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 throughout the rest of the month. Again, it's almost on autopilot. So now with that front loaded that first day, now the rest of the month is about execution. So now I know when the activity comes up, I know what I'm going to say. I know the email I'm going to send. Then every day I take those 25 accounts and 75 people, and I follow them on social listening tools like Sales Navigator, Owler, Facebook, Twitter, those type of things. And I have this morning routine where every morning I get up. I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning, get my shit together from 5:30 to 6:30. 6:30, I grab my coffee beforehand. From 6:30 to 7:30 every morning, I just kind of scan through data feeds. And all I'm looking for is, like, I'm tracking all of those accounts and I'm looking for triggers, right? Did they open up a new office, launch a new product? And I'll fire off 2 or 3 emails every single morning, right? Just to stay consistent with super high quality. I don't mind, and I probably won't put them into a cadence, or anything like that. I'm just kind of being opportunistic there, but I'm doing it so I can get into that routine. And then I also use Feedly, where I just, I follow a bunch of RSS data feeds on certain topics, right? Sales blogs, AI, artificial, those type of things. And that's kind of read my paper there. And I'll share 2 or 3 posts every morning of, hey, really cool article here, whatever, right? So first Monday of every month, I block off. I do persona-driven cadences and tailored ones. And then every day I drink my coffee and I just send out 2 or 3. And that's pretty much all I do. I'm a lot more analogous these days to kind of like a senior AE, right? But I still do it almost every day to stay consistent with it. And that way I can track all that stuff at the end of the month to see which one's got high response rates, and I can make adjustments and move forward. And then on the Friday thing, I realized I was going batshit crazy on Fridays, or I'm sorry, in general, when COVID hit, because for me, everything changed. I mean, 70% of my revenues was on-site training. And so that got ripped away from me. So now everything became remote, and I had to figure out, oh my God, how do I make sure that we stay in business and we pivot, right? So APAC, EMEA, I was doing all these trainings from like 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And the way I work, I mean, I sent you my calendar link. I'd say pick a time, right? So what was happening was my calendar link was going out to everybody for trainings and meetings and everything else. And my days were bananas, like absolutely bananas. I didn't control anything about my week. And then it was the weekend, and that was time with my family, right? So I don't want to say I don't control it, but it was more about my wife and my daughter and doing what they wanted to do. So I was there with them, right? So I realized I didn't have a single day to myself that I owned, that I could control. And so I ended up putting Fridays, I call them my days, and I blocked it off 100%. So you cannot schedule anything on a Friday. You cannot choose anything on my calendar for a Friday. I can choose to set up a meeting on a Friday, but you can't automatically jump on my calendar. So Fridays being my days weren't necessarily, I'm not working on Fridays. It was, that is my mental clarity day that I can do whatever I want with. And whether it's work and catching up on activities and those type of things, or scheduling a few meetings with people, maybe a podcast or two, or going to the grocery store and taking care of some errands and that type of stuff. So what happened was, by implementing Fridays as my days, it gave me this mental reprieve to say, this is a day that I have to my own. And it was so effective for me that I ended up implementing it across the board with JB Sales. So everybody at the company now has Fridays as their days, and you cannot schedule a meeting on that day. And I don't care if they work. If they want to take it as a mental health day, take it as a mental health day. If they want to catch up on activities, catch up on activities. But we do not expect anybody to do anything on that day other than take care of themselves. And it's been a really healthy thing.
That's awesome. And do you, when you are running your schedule the other 4 days of the week, is it still the same way? Like folks can still book you 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and you just know that, hey, fuck, I'm going to have to push this thing off, this whatever else thing I have to do, this output, but I'm going to have time on Friday, and you kind of know that in the back of your mind?
Absolutely. So I do all my kind of follow-up activities, like the ones that are not pressing, right? Because I still do a lot where, say, Tom, you and I spoke 6 months ago and you said, yeah, John, this sounds good, but we're not in a good, you know what I mean? Follow up, right? That type of thing. I got a lot of those type of activities, like reconnect, that type of stuff. I'll usually kind of, if I can do them throughout the week, cool. But if I can't, I usually kind of put them on those Fridays to say, okay, I'll get to those when I can get to them. But yeah, the rest of the week is pretty jam-packed. We did this with Morgan when he first started. He was a little bit all over the place. And one of his strengths was, when he was an SDR and an SDR manager at Terminus, was he was very structured with his calendar. It was like from 7 to 8 do this, from 8 to 8:30 do that, from 8:30 to 9:30 do this, right? And that's how he really thrived in within that structure. And I realized he didn't really have that structure with us. It was all over the place. He was doing a training, then a sales call, then this, then that, and the other thing. And what we did was we just said, all right, mornings and afternoons, okay? Mornings, because most of our clients are on the West Coast, right? We're here on the East Coast. And so mornings, there wasn't a lot of stuff going on. So I told them, all right, for your mornings, don't book meetings in your mornings. Your meetings are going to be in the afternoon. Okay. So block your calendar so you can only schedule sales calls in the afternoon. But in the mornings, do everything that looks like this, right? So typing effectively, right? So check your emails, respond to emails, do all that, do all your research, do all your prep, right? Anything that involved you looking at a computer screen and typing stuff, that's what I want you to do in the mornings. But in the afternoons, do everything that's associated with the phone. So meetings in the afternoon, call blitzes in the afternoon, because when you're in that groove, you can kind of say, okay, I'm now on the phone, so let me do that. So just by sectioning that out and saying, okay, mornings were more typing and email focused, and afternoons are meeting and phone focused, he started to gain some sanity in his schedule. And also just realizing that everything is not that important. You know what I mean? Like, there are certain things that, this goes to the 4-hour work week of what really is important. And we think it's important, but at the end of the day, if you start to put some structure in place to get rid of that stuff, you realize a lot of it isn't. And we do a lot of busy work. So just tracking that and trying to make sure that you're staying on top of what's actually important, which is all about goal setting and constantly reminding yourself of what you need to be doing to achieve those goals, and not doing the things that are not helping you achieve those goals. That type of thing matters as well.
Mm-hmm. And to dig back on one question I had on the way that you're setting up your prospecting, right? You mentioned 25 accounts, you're picking out your personas. what happens if, the first month there, 5 of those accounts, tell you to F off and 3 of them turn into an opportunity? Are you adding more in there, or is it like, hey, here's my 25, I know that's going to convert to X amount of opportunities and that's what I need?
Yeah, if they fall off, they fall off. I've again, more of a routine fact. Not that you shouldn't. It's just, for me, it's just the mental bandwidth. I've gotten into that. Okay, 25, flush them out. And if only 5 of them are left at the end of the quarter, I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? I'm getting a new 25 in another quarter. So yeah, I don't try to mix and match. I stay pretty committed to my standard flow. Because the reason is, I'm following all those accounts on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on all these different tools. So you might say no to me today, Tom, but then a month later, something might happen in your company that might open up the opportunity to reconnect with you at that point. So you might go through a merger, you might do something else. So I could reach out to you. And even if you said no, take me off your list or whatever it is. I mean, if you say take me off your list, I'm taking you off my list. But if I just get a no, we're all set, or we're not interested, a month later, I might be like, hey, Tom, you know what? I've been keeping myself updated on you guys. And I noticed that this thing just happened. I know you said no about a month ago to this conversation, but would you be open to it now? Right. So that's where I just kind of keep them in that flow.
Yep. And I want to, take a few minutes to talk through some questions from the audience that I gathered as well. So this is an interesting question. So how has the ability to get your messaging out at greater scale helped or hurt your business, right? Because it's kind of that Gary V-esque model where you're giving away 99% of your content for free. Right. So how does that affect your ability to maybe charge for that 1%? Does it? Do people ever say, no, I'm all set, I listened to the podcast and we're good?
Yeah. So it's funny, Gary, I love a lot about Gary and his messaging, and that there's some things I disagree with him on. One of them is that you should give all of your content away for free. Like I just think that for somebody like Gary, good for you, man. Like, you have a billion people, you have VaynerMedia, you're already a multi-millionaire. So it's a lot easier for you to be so cool and give away all super high value shit, man. But for the rest of us that are trying to make a fucking buck and trying to get to his level, there's a balance here of what you give away versus what you charge for. Now, I will say that when I got into this industry, before I even knew Gary Vee, I genuinely believed in the in the giver's gain mentality, which is like, the more you give away, the more you'll get back, right? And you can't give with the expectation of getting back. You give because you give, right? And I mean, it helped me early in my career. Like, when I was brand new, 23 years old, started my first company, Thrive Networks. We didn't have, I was the VP of sales and marketing, and we were self-funded. So we had no money. So I was the sales, marketing, PR engine for all of us. And so what I would do is I would go out to networking events, for instance, and I would literally meet every single person, and I would talk to them not about what I wanted, but I would always talk to them about, hey, who are you here to meet with? What can I do to help you? And I would go overboard making introductions to people and that type of stuff. Fast forward, when I had to start my own company, all those favors that I had done to everybody early in my career came back in spades, because now I called everybody up and said, hey, I need an accountant. You mind help me out? Sure, John, I'll take care of you. Hey, I need a website. You mind help me out? Sure, John, no problem. Hey, I need payroll. You know what I mean? So all that came back. So it really solidified to me how important it was. And then from a content standpoint, when I got into training, when I really got into training back in, I want to say 2007-ish, it was still a pretty gated community, in the sense that if you ever wanted the slide deck from a trainer, like, you got a better shot at seeing God than them sending that to you, right? Because they're like, no, this is my special sauce, and and these are and you have to spend money for me to come and teach you how smart I am and all that other stuff. And I just kind of was like, first of all, A, I'm not that smart, and B, like, this shit is good and it works. And if you're hiring me because of that one nugget, then I've done something wrong. You know what I mean? Like, because anybody can get a nugget from anywhere, right? I mean, you pick any methodology, you could Google it, and there's 50 other people out there on YouTube right now telling you how to do it, right? So why would they buy it from you? Well, they're not going to buy it from you for that one stupid nugget that is your special sauce. They're going to buy it because they see value in you. Right. And they say, oh, well, if John gives away that, then what if I paid for it? You know what I mean? I mean, I tell people all the time, Tom, I mean, the portal that you're in right now, I mean, if you really wanted to, you could spend, you know, a couple of days combing through all my blog posts, every video I've put out there on Zoom or on YouTube and those places, right? And you could put together, I'd say 90 to 95% of what I charge people for, right? But people still pay it because people are going back to people are lazy, right? It's just the same reason. Like, you can get a Harvard education for free if you really wanted to. Every course at Harvard is online for free. Okay. But you don't get the Harvard, you know, certification for it. And it would take you a while to figure out how to learn and translate that stuff. So why do they still go spend $80,000 a year to go to Harvard? Right. So it's the same type of philosophy. So I do believe in giving away a lot to show value and to add value to the audience and to put you in a position of like, holy shit, that guy's some, but then gating some of it that is your special sauce, that is, or might not be that special nugget, but the process that you put together to help people implement this, right? It's like working out. I mean, think of working out. There's a million, I mean, everybody knows what you need to do working out, for crying out loud. Why do you get a personal trainer? Because you need the accountability. There's a certain structure to it that you didn't really think about, that they know about, you know, those type of things. That's why people pay for that shit.
Yep, totally. All right, back to another question. So someone wanted to know about video, right? And I think he's a sales leader. He runs a sales development team, and he wants to know, not how do you use video, but how do you get reps excited about something like video so that they would actually use it?
You know, I think a lot of it has to do with results, right? In order for reps to get excited, they have to see some results. So it's almost like you want to do a little pilot with some of the players on your team that might be interested and want to try this, to test it out on some clients about, you know, to see like, hey, what's the impact that video has, and not just prospecting, right? But objection handling, delivering proposals. Like, there's all sorts of ways that video can be applied. But I think that, you know, you have to, first of all, people have to get comfortable on camera. Okay. And at this point, if you're not comfortable on camera, you're going to forget about sales in general. Like, business is going to be really difficult for you moving forward here, because this is the new world. Anybody who's waiting for this to go back to normal, I got news for you. You're screwed. There is no normal going back to. Okay. We are in this virtual world right now, and it's just now accelerated because of COVID. So get used to it. Okay. That's first and foremost, is suck it up and get on camera. But then start using it as internal. Here's a way to start doing it internally, to just kind of get people in the motion of doing it, which is run your meetings. So instead of having, you know, one of the things that I saw a few companies doing that I've started to adopt myself is they'll actually, instead of having that useless all hands meeting where I kind of drone through a bunch of the things that the company's doing, and, you know, and then leave 20 minutes for Q&A for the crew, right? Like, instead of doing that boring piece of shit meeting that everybody can't stand, like, why not, as an executive, light up a little video, you know, Zoom video thing or Drift or whatever it is, record a 10-minute snippet on, hey, everybody, here's the quick updates of what we got going on right now. And, you know, send me an email, send me a video if you have questions about it. Right. So now people can watch it on their own time. They can react how they want to react, or whatever it is. Same thing with internal meetings with your sales team. It's like, okay, hey, start getting used to, hey, Tom, like, if you're my rep, I'll send you, instead of sending you an email to ask you a question about something, I'm going to send you a video and say, hey, Tom, you know what? You had sent the other day on your forecast review, you were talking about this. I totally forgot about that. Could you do me a favor? Just hit me quick with an email, with a video back about where we are on this situation, and getting you to then send me a video. Hey, John, here's, you know, oh, that deal. So now it's just kind of starting to, like, this is how we're doing business now. Right. And this is how we are communicating now. So you start to get people used to that. And then you gotta train them, you know what I mean? And you gotta trial with experimentation about, like, okay, well, what kind of message would you send? Why are you going to send it? Like, how personal do you want this to be? Right. And have them practice, right? You go back to tier 1, tier 2, tier 3s. I tier out my accounts for a specific reason. The tier 1s, obviously, those are the ones I'm going to be super personalized with. I'm going to follow on social. Tier 2s are volume. But tier 3s, which I always used to hate because you're bad customers anyways, now I like them for one specific reason, and it's practice. So if I'm trying anything new, I run a list of my tier 3s and I throw up all over myself, and who cares? As long as I'm not doing anything offensive, I can kind of get away with whatever I want to get away with, right? So, maybe have a list of shitty accounts to test video on and see if it starts. And as soon as they start seeing the results, they're going to start to get excited about it. Right. So that's why you have to share as managers, anytime a rep does something that's cool and they get a response specifically on video, take that and make a big news out of it. Be like, holy shit, look at this video that Tom sent to one of our top tier accounts, and look at the response that he got back from this. Boom. Oh man, if you're not doing video right now, you're out of your mind. Right. And that'll start to snowball into, okay, let's do this more often.
I love that. I could just picture you and Morgan and James just sending videos back and forth to each other all day.
Yep. I mean, Morgan's really good on Morgan, the way he does it is I tend to jump on the video response. He actually does voicemails through text. So instead of texting me, he'll just do a voicemail and it'll show up a WAV file and I'll listen to it. And then I'll usually pop a video back and be like, hey, what's up, man? Right. Instagram, for instance, if you want a response usually if you hit me up on Instagram with a question, most of the time, instead of me typing a response, I'm going to light up my video and be like, cool. Hey, Tom, good question on that one. Instead of typing you here, let me give you an answer on this one. Boom. It's just an easier way for me to communicate that message.
I love that. And so I want to bring you really quick. This is a new thing I'm doing to the selfish section, right? So I ask a question specifically for me. So I was listening to your podcast a few weeks ago. You had the guy from Sweet Fish Media. You're talking about podcasting.
Yep, Logan, yeah.
So I think, there's no surprise that I'm a big fan of podcasts. I've been running this for a few years now. And I think that it's something that can really help businesses. I see folks like Gong and Drift and Outreach and so on and so forth using it. So here's my question for you. What's your advice to me pitching that internally of, what's the ROI going to be and things like that? Like, how do I get buy-in that that's going to be a good idea and that's going to help us to build a brand, drive revenue, so on and so forth?
I think you would have to pitch it as a trial almost, right? If you're coming to me as some kid who wants to try to create your own podcast, right? Because my concern as a business owner or the CMO or whatever of your company is, wait a minute, you're trying to build your personal brand here outside of the company and I can't control that message, right? So there's the concern that you have to lead up with, right? To say, okay, well, no, here's my plan for my podcast. Not, I just want to start a podcast. Here's my plan. My conversion ratios on my emails and my calls right now to senior level executives is 1%. Okay. So let's start with a baseline of what you're currently doing now that is probably not working in a lot of ways. Okay. So I have, I listened to John, I listened to Logan, where they talked about using podcasts to engage with senior level executives to try to get more meetings with them from a sales perspective. So I'm going to start my little podcast here on, learning from the CSO or learning from the VP of sales, right? That type of stuff. And what I'm going to do is, here's a list of 50 accounts that I want to get business with. And instead of me reaching out to those executives and asking them, hey, I want to meet with you to sell you something, I'm going to invite them on my podcast and have a no sales pitch conversation about certain things, about what it's like to be a VP of sales, what you see, those type of things. And first of all, I'm going to learn because that's my target audience. So that's how I'm going to increase my business acumen here, because I'm going to be able to, learn from those people. So I'm going to be able to speak to that better. So the auxiliary benefit to this is I'm going to have better conversations in general. Second of all, it's content that we can use to brand. And I'll give this to you, marketing department. If you want to cut this up and put little snippets on it and push this out there, by all means, I'm happy to do it myself. But if you guys want to control that message, by all means do that. And then we want to convert over the next quarter. I want to see how many of those that I get meetings with end up turning into really good qualified opportunities. And at the end of the quarter, we'll do an analysis. I'll reach out to 50 accounts. I'll see how many of them actually agree to be on my podcast. Of those 50, say that there's 20 that say, yes, I'll be on your podcast. Of those 20, I want to see how many actually flow into qualified meetings to talk about our solution. And if that number is better than my existing approach right here, then then I'm going to say, okay, we should probably do this moving forward, right? If they're not, then I won't do it anymore and I'll stop from there. Is that okay? Right? So you kind of give them parameters of what your strategy is around this podcast, and you put kind of guardrails on it to say, look, I'm not going to go outside these rails. and we're going to measure the effectiveness of it and go from there and see what happens.
Yeah. So one thing that I take away from you a lot too is just try things and be a scientist about it, right? And check the metrics and know your numbers and be able to identify what's working and what's not. If it's not actually working, then maybe that's not the right platform, not the right move.
I will tell you right now, the biggest frustration that I see reps and that I had too is having this emotional discussion with my managers of why I didn't like doing something or why I wanted to do something. You know what I mean? Being like, well, I want to do a podcast. Well, why do you want to do it? I don't know, because I want to get my brand out there and I think it's a good idea. And I heard it on a podcast from John and it's fucking good idea. You know, that type of thing. If I'm a VP of sales listening to that, I'm like, no, go fucking do your job. Like, keep making phone calls for me, right? But if you're like, look, John, you know, I've been looking at my numbers, man. And after COVID hit, they went from a conversion ratio X to conversion ratio Y. And I feel like I'm doing the definition of insanity here, man, doing the same thing over and over again because my conversion ratio is literally like 1 to 2%. I think I want to try something different here, but here's the structure of how I want to look at it, right? And if you can break it down like that and come with like, here's the baseline of what I'm working off of, and this is why I'm doing it, and here's what my hypothesis is, you're going to get your managers to be way more open to you doing things or not doing things, right? Because otherwise, look, I remember like there's 2 dials that you can pull as a manager, right? Quality and quantity. And you have to figure out which one to cross off the list before you can start to focus. So for me, when I like at my first company, Thrive, I knew my equation down pat, right? 400 dials a week, got me 8 meetings a month, got me 4 proposals, got me 2 pieces of closed business, an average deal size of $3,500. So I just ran that equation, right? So I would just make 400 dials. And then when I hired reps, I would tell them, make 400 dials a week, right? And I almost didn't give a shit what they said. I just like, yeah, here's a general script, but because I had to determine, will you put in the work, right? Because, and what would happen was I would have some reps come to me and they were like, oh, well, John, I'm not getting the meetings that I was expecting, you know, after a month or 2 of calling. I'd be like, okay, cool. How many calls did you make last week? Well, I made 200, 250. And I'd be like, get the fuck out of my office and go make 400 dials. Because until you make 400 dials and the numbers don't flush out the way that I know that they did for me, I don't know what to work on with you. I don't know if it's an effort thing, if I don't know it's a quality thing. But as soon as you hit 400 dials on a consistent basis and those numbers aren't there, then I know it's not an effort thing, it's a quality thing. So now I can work with you on that, right? But if you just come with these, well, it's not working. Well, why isn't it working? What have you tested? What have you tried? Because if you are not segmenting that stuff out, then you're going to do what the fuck I tell you to do. And otherwise, go find another job. But if you come to me with data about why what I'm asking you to do is not nearly as effective as what you're trying to do on a side hustle or whatever it is, because I get a lot of reps, well, John, that sounds great, but my boss won't even let me not make 50 dials today. So how do I? Everybody talks about their side hustle, right? Oh, I got a side hustle. Well, make your side hustle your fucking job and go do the quality stuff on the off hours. You know what I mean? Like, take 10 accounts at, heaven forbid, 6 o'clock at night and do some extra fucking work that you have to actually spend some more time on after hour 5, you know, and sit down and do some research, be thoughtful, send some video emails, and then come to me as a manager at the end of the month and say, John, man, I've been doing 50 dials a day like you've been asking me to over the course of the month. And these are my conversion ratios. I've made however many calls, right? And I've gotten this many conversations, this many. On the side, I've been really targeting some tier 1 accounts and I've been using video. And dude, I'm getting like a 20% response rate when I do it this way. Your way, I'm getting a 2%. This way, I'm getting a 20%. Which one do you want me to do? And if your boss then tells you to continue to make 50 dials a day, go find another job. Right? Because any manager worth their shirt is going to say, whoa, what did you just tell me there, Tom? This video thing that you're doing, you're getting a 20% response rate on that? Yeah, stop making 50 dials right now and just do that, right? I mean, any manager that's worth their shirt will do that. But the ones that no, you still got to hit your metrics, you're not going to win that battle. So go find another job.
That's the JB Rand I was looking for right there.
Every once in a while I get kind of fired up with I just get fired up with laziness and people going through the fucking motions and not really wanting to get better, not trying to get better, always looking for an answer when there's plenty of them out there. Just Google it and figure it out. It's not, I got to tell people, I'm not a rocket science. I'm a state school kid, drank my way through 4 years of college. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not dumb, but I'm also not a Harvard fucking grad here. You know what I mean? I just know I'll
Yeah.
outwork you. You know what I mean? Like I know my work ethic. It's stronger than most, and I test things out constantly. And so I figure shit out.
Yeah, totally. Go Terps. So before we get to where folks can find you and engage with all this content, especially if they want to personalize an email and try to sell you something, I just had to ask about the Instagram story, the smoking weed in the hot tub. I mean, when are you going to do like a live podcast out of the hot tub? That's the real question.
Yeah, the hot, like, so that's usually if you ever look on Fridays, you know, that's my Zen spot, is in my hot tub smoking a joint. You know, now that I'm not shy about it at all. Now that pot is legal here in Massachusetts, anybody who judges me for smoking weed and actually drinks alcohol after work is a fucking hypocrite. So, anyways, I'm trying to normalize it. You know, I mean, my portal, the on demand platform, the price is $420 a year. So,
Yeah.
you know, one of these days I am going to start a stoner sales podcast where you just like if you've seen the hot wings one where you taste the hot wings and you ask questions, like this one, you got to rip a huge bong hit and then answer questions about sales and see where it goes. So I'm not there yet because, I still got some bills to pay here, but once I get to the point where I really don't give a shit, I'm like 99% don't give a shit, but there's still 1% that I do. But, once I get there, I will start that. But, it kind of goes back to just being real, man. I mean, I think so many people are trying to put on this facade about who they are and all this other stuff, when I think the biggest thing that people appreciate these days is authenticity and kind of no bullshit. And that's where I've kind of found a home with Instagram. It's like that middle ground for me of, I post good stuff, tips and ideas and kind of my journey. And guess what? Part of my journey is getting stoned and figuring out how to deal with all this shit that we're dealing with right now. I mean, we all have our vices, you know what I mean? Like some people exercise, some people drink, some people, go take some time off or whatever it is. For me, weed has been an extremely healthy thing for me to get creative, to deal with the stress, to all those things included. And, and I've actually gone pretty deep on the medical component of marijuana and understand the benefits of CBD versus THC and all that stuff. But yeah, you can follow me along on Instagram and see a few more stories of me getting stoned in a hot tub.
I love it. Where else can folks check you out? No, we're wrapping up here.
Yeah, I mean, as always, so jbarrows.com, so JBARROWS.com. That'll pretty much give you can check out our blog, all the events that we're doing, all that's free. And also, if you click on training for individuals, that'll bring you to the on-demand platform that we just launched back in April, and that has all of our content in it. So it's, my two core programs, Filling the Funnel, Driving to Close. That's all what I train on: Salesforce, LinkedIn, all those big companies. But then there's like, mini programs like James is on personal branding and Morgan's is on social selling. And then pretty much every video tip and every asset that we have is in there. So for $420 a year, you get all of it. And then LinkedIn, right? Actually, LinkedIn is probably where I post most of my kind of new ideas and tips and stuff like that. And Instagram is actually where I do all my consulting. So like if anybody out there is listening wants some free consulting, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. The handle's John M as in Michael Barrows, all one word. That's where you hit me up on Instagram, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can if you have any questions about it.
And for God's sakes, pony up the $420 a year and pay for the platform, because it's awesome, especially if you're an AE, SDR, someone that's out there prospecting and has a quote over their head. John, I appreciate the time, man.
Thanks for having me on. I do want to say one thing for all those people out there that are looking for jobs, right? What you just said there, as far as pony up, right? Spend some money on, and I don't mean that on J Barrows. If you want to, I really appreciate it. And I know you'll get some value out of it, but just in general, like be consuming content. There's so much content out right now that is for free, for paid, whatever it is. And when you're sitting in an interview and I ask you, hey, what have you been doing for the past couple of months, but you're looking for a job? And all you tell me is, well, I've been looking for jobs, and you haven't told me that you've been improving yourself, then okay, good for you. But the kid who comes in and says, oh man, so I've been, I signed up for this program. I took this, I did, you know what I mean? I signed up for a masterclass. I took Chris Voss's masterclass, and I signed up for JB Sales for this, and I figured it out, and I've learned a lot of stuff with it. Like, that's the kid that I want on my team. So right now is a great opportunity to educate yourself, even if you're not in a job, and find these nuggets that you can use to give yourself a much better chance at getting a job moving forward here. So anybody who invests in themselves is going to be somebody that I want to bring on board as on my team. And don't wait for your management to invest in it for you, right? To say, even if you have a job right now and you're like, oh, we don't get training, shut up. Go find it. There's tons of content out there that you can use. And I never want to hear that as an excuse from somebody that says, oh, I don't know because I didn't, you didn't invest in the training for me.
Totally. I mean, if you're not going to invest in yourself, then how can you expect anyone else to invest in you or pay you more or give you a better job or anything like that? So you gotta go make it happen on your own. No pun intended.
There you go.
Cool, man.
Awesome.
I appreciate the time, JB.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I really do. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for checking out that podcast. I hope you saw value, whether you're working out right now or doing the dishes or laying around the couch, whatever you're doing right now while you're listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some value. If you did, the only thing that you can do to really help me out is to share this podcast with a friend, share it on social media, and please subscribe wherever you're listening, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is, and leave a review on Apple if that's where you're listening. That's what helps us to spread reach, helps us to get better guests like the one that you heard just now, and to give you as much value as possible. So connect with me, LinkedIn, Kamalemo, Instagram, Twitter, Tommy Tahoe, and subscribe, leave a review, and make it a great day. Peace. Thank you so much.